This is Getting Past Subtitles. My name is Sean Peel.
And I'm DK Lee.
And welcome to week 3 in our little Jet Li timeline lifespan.
You mean Bruce Lee, right?
Yes. For like a millisecond in my brain, I panicked. I was like, did I mess it up again? You will not get me this time. As I was like setting this up, I was like, I don't have to say, like, Bruce Lee's not related to any of this movie, so therefore I can't mess this up. Jet Li is the guy.
Yes.
Jet Li is the man. And then we're bouncing all over the place. Now we're back in the 2000s, in 2002. This is before Fearless. Would you consider this like a wushu movie? Do you think this counts as one of those?
I think it is. It's more.
I think it's in the same vein as Fearless, where it's very, very loosely grounded and also based off
This is more like fiction, though. It's not. Really Like,
but like still, like they still kind of like it's like just enough,
like a sprinkle.
Yeah.
They just kind of throw it in
it's
there.
Like there, but ultimately, like,
but it's not really. Yeah.
Not at all related to reality. Yeah. Oh, that would be cool if I could float. If I can learn a martial art that, like, hop skips water.
You can. You just learned the wrong one.
That's true. I gotta get out of this country.
You just learned the wrong one.
But this week we watched Hero, very, very iconic film, right? Not to me though. This is my first time watching it.
Yeah.
But I was today years old when I realized why everybody loves this movie, and that it is indeed good. I really, really enjoy this movie. Before we jump in, like I said, it was released in 2002. The director was Yi-Mou Zhang. So it was released in China in 2002. It didn't get to the US until 2004. And although, so it was distributed in the US by Miramax.
Yeah.
And they bought the rights in 2002, like I think after its release. But they didn't distribute it in 2004. I read that they delayed it like 6 times.
Yeah.
I don't know what the underlying issue was or why, but it took like everybody and their mother, including Quentin Tarantino, to be like, put out this movie.
Yeah, I think Tarantino endorsed it, and then that's how they got it.
Released. He was like, just use my name to bring in more viewers, and I mean, it worked.
I think that's what it was. I think they probably were scared that it probably wouldn't do that well in America.
Gotcha.
And so they were kind of hesitant to kind of release it.
But this was after, I read after Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. So like there was already kind of like,
There is, but still, it's still like an international, film. And
you're like sophomore slump.
And you're never sure. Even now, you're never sure if like an international film will do really well. And it usually doesn't, right?
No, yeah, right.
It's not. It's very few and far between that an international film really does well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, but it did do well. I think it was in the box office highest for like 2 weeks, maybe.
Yeah.
Top for
it did
2
great.
weeks. Yeah.
And I think it won. No, it didn't win, but it got nominated. Almost won.
Yeah.
Best foreign film. Yeah. For the Oscars. But that was in 2002.
Yeah.
That was a couple years before. But yeah, so it took Tarantino to kind of endorse the movie, and then it kind of became a hit when it did release here. In China, though, it did really well. I think it was the most expensive movie for its time when it was produced.
To date. At that time, yeah.
Dude, like, everything is practical in that movie.
And
it's crazy.
It's just, the scale of it is.
Yeah. Like, I watched that, and I was like, no way this is all real. Like, the more you look at it, you're like, that's all legit. It's like, they actually used, like, the People's Liberal China Army, right? And it was like an estimated 18,000 extras that they used.
That's only possible in China. You know what I mean? To bring that many people.
Bro, 18,000 people.
Yeah.
That's bonkers. How do you facilitate like that many people in it?
Seriously.
I've been to a couple, football games and stadiums. It's not easy.
Probably like 4 or 5 of those.
Yeah. So yeah, that definitely took a lot. I mean, it probably helped. I mean, they're all in the army, so they're kind of, already in that mentality. But yeah, like all extras. I mean, all the costumes, all the drapery, all the locations, the whole, like, even the lake scene, like, that was all practical. It took 3 weeks, I read, for them to shoot that because it was like the water needs to be still, you know. So yeah, so I mean, definitely a huge endeavor, but it paid off. It's definitely like, it's just one of those things where, like, I watch it and it's like, this is just really hard to be done again.
Visually, it's quite magnificent, I think.
Yeah.
In terms of the cinematography and the colors that they use, especially, and the way that they kind of use that to tell the story. You know?
Right.
I think really it stands out, right?
100%.
From, you know, a lot of movies, different movies. It's definitely very artistic. It's like very stylistic, right?
100%.
In the way that the film is portrayed, and I think the use of that color and the use of, like, you know, the wire, you know, action and all that kind of works together.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, for example, like Fearless, I feel like is trying to be a little more grounded, but they still use like the wire action to kind of help aid some of the action and kind of give it more momentum.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that here it's I wouldn't say like it's used better, but I think that it's fits the general aesthetic.
Yeah. 100%. Where, yeah, like in Fearless, it feels it's just, like you said, used to elevate the action, just make it more entertaining, or just give it sort of like that blockbuster edge that, you know, that we talked about that episode. But here, like you said, it definitely is aiding the aesthetic, and it just fits the overall tone and the story and just the world
and the feeling that it's like a legend, right?
Yeah. It feels like
legendary people kind of thing.
This movie
like a myth.
Feels like an opera piece.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You know, like it feels like very sort of Shakespearean, or just like, it doesn't feel like a movie. Like, I watched this, I was like, this is like just like an artistic piece in a way, you know?
Yeah. And like for me too, generally, I honestly don't really like wire action just because I don't like the weightlessness of it, like the feeling, and
it gets a little goofy.
And it just doesn't feel like, you know, there's not a lot of like impact to it. But in this movie, I think that because it feels like almost like an opera, or like kind of feels like this legend that's being told, like an old story that's being told through like, you know, like oration. It kind of feels like that, right?
Yeah.
And so here, I think that it kind of works well because it's these characters who are almost, you know, they're not like real people. They're almost like mythical, right? In one sense. And I think that the wire action kind of lends itself well to that.
100% agreed.
And definitely the scale also really lends to that as well, you know?
Agreed.
Yeah.
It's just like I definitely had the like the opposite feeling that I have compared to Fearless, where like it was a good movie, and I was more surprised by the story, but it felt like blockbustery, but also I don't know, like it didn't have sort of that edge or anything like that really made it kind of stand out or special. But this movie really had that. I kind of wrote down that, like, overall my feelings for the movie were, I really liked it. I was really surprised by it. I had a good time watching it. But like, as much as the style, like, it's a very stylistic movie, right? As much as that is really pushing up the weight for the bulk of what we're seeing, it also has like a really great story, like, and really, you know, interesting enough characters, and just like interesting like intricacies that kind of carries the whole thing through. And it's not just pretty to look at. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how I felt. But what was sort of your impressions? When did you, because you've seen this before in the past, so how kind of give us your backstory.
I think I saw it when it basically when it came out, like 2000, like 20 years ago. It's crazy, man, to think about it like that.
Yeah.
But well, back then I was a kid, so like, you know, I just watched it and just saw it. And
floating.
And the one thing that actually, the thing that like I remember the most from back then was actually the arrow, the last scene when he gets shot by the arrows.
Yeah.
And then it like pans to like that little hole.
Yeah, like
where
his,
it's just like his silhouette of like arrows, right? I think that stuck to me the most actually when I was younger. And for me, more than all the wire and the action, it was more the scale of the movie that really captivated me. I was like, dang, how do you have that many people? Or like,
Yeah.
Especially like when there's like those, when they're shooting the arrows, like all of those scenes when they're shooting arrows, it's just like
crazy.
Just so many arrows everywhere, right? And all of that stuff just kind of felt really grand and really big to me as a little kid. And so I think that's what like captivated me the most. Obviously, I didn't really know about what the story was about or who, these people were, but
too complicated for your child mind.
Yeah, I was in like second grade.
Oh, okay.
Something like that. So yeah, it was definitely something I think spectacular when I was younger.
Yeah.
Watching it again now, I think it's definitely it holds up because of its stylistic choices, I think.
Yeah.
And the story is not bad either, so.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely like the uniqueness of the movie keeps it fresh.
Yeah.
Keeps it like gives it that timeless kind of quality to it, But yeah, I really felt like I was watching a Kurosawa movie again, watching this. Just like especially what was the last one that we watched? With the other king that like
Ran?
It felt very much like that. Just like the scale of it and like this very kind of it felt like an epic in a way, right? Yeah. So it's like the way that movie starts off where he goes to the kingdom and there's just like everybody's lined up there and it's like him going like just they make the little hallway and up the stairs. I was like, geesh, it's so much. So but I do believe it's your week. What do you have really quick? Dun dun dun.
The synopsis.
Dun, dun, dun. The names are easy. You shouldn't wobble this.
Yeah, so the story, we follow a character named Nameless.
What?
And he is actually he's a commoner, but he is an assassin that basically killed these other assassins to gain a name for himself because these other assassins were trying to kill the king of the Qin Empire or Qin Dynasty, I think.
Yeah.
And so this guy reportedly was able to best those three assassins who were kind of the strongest assassins in the land, and he was able to best them, and because of that, the king of the Qin Dynasty calls him to meet with him because he wants to know what happened and how he was able to kill these assassins. And so Nameless is taken to the palace, and there he starts to talk and explain to the king how he killed these three different assassins. Yeah. And as he is going through, basically he starts telling the story and he starts talking with the king. He gets closer and closer to the king as the king he gains more trust with the king as they're talking.
There were like rewards for bounties, essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
There's rewards for bounties as well, but basically every time he would show the king like proof, like for example the spear of Sky, one of the assassins, or the sword of the Flying Snow, one of the other assassins, or the other sword from Broken Sword, which is his name as well. They all have some interesting names, yeah. But so as he is talking to him, he starts to explain, but then the king kind of questions him and doubts him and like tries to see if he's really telling the truth.
Yeah.
And there lies deeper truth within the story that he's telling, and he's actually not there to like save the king, but he was actually planning to kill the king by faking the deaths of these other assassins to gain the trust of the king, and so that he's able to get closer to the king and eventually try to kill him. But by the end, he realizes through what Broken Sword realizes that the only way for the land, for the country, for the empires to have peace is to be unified under one banner. And so he decides to not kill the king, and he leaves or tries to leave the palace, but the king basically executes him because, you know, everyone saw that he was about to kill the king.
That is law.
And so, yeah, it's law. And so he gets killed, but then he is buried as a hero. And eventually, well, in the ending credits, it says that the countries are united under one banner and happily ever after. I don't know.
It's more like a happily ever after.
Yeah.
Question mark.
And it's kind of the like a mythic story about the unification, the first time that China was unified under one banner.
Yeah, under the Qing Dynasty, I guess. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So also very, very loose retelling of kind of like a piece of history, but not really.
Ultra loose.
Ultra loose. I would like to think that these things happened. Okay, let me believe. Let me believe. Yeah, I was really like, I think for the most part I was really engaged by this movie. Like I said, I really went in fresh. Like I didn't really anticipate much what was going on. Like I've seen, like, you know, the infamous lake scene, like, and all those things. So, but outside of the action, I didn't really know what to expect. So like seeing everybody in the cast was really awesome.
Great cast, right?
Great cast. Like really, really
killer
superb.
cast.
Tony Leung is playing, you know, the heartthrob again as usual.
Yeah,
the romancer.
I mean, you know, in the mood for love, they're back together again.
He's a smooth criminal for sure. Yeah, Jet Li's character. Like I understand now, like what you said, I guess when we were talking about this movie, that he's the protagonist, question mark, but he's not the forefront of the movie. It is a little bit of, I wouldn't even call it an ensemble cast, because like he leads it in the beginning and he's just kind of the glue for everything. But for the most part, it's about like Broken Sky.
He's kind of the, you know, the unreliable narrator, right?
Yeah.
Within the story, where he's telling the story to the king and
making us believe. The
king's trying to figure out the things, and we're kind of in the king's shoes a little bit, right?
Sure.
In one sense, trying to figure out, you know, what the truth is and trying to piece the things together, the story together.
Yeah, and then we're like led astray, or like it's made like, oh, like that's not the truth at all, and then everything kind of comes into fruition.
Yeah, and going off that, I think. I really love how they kind of do the flashbacks, or like, they retell the same story, but then from a different point of view, right?
Yeah.
Like and they all depict that through color, right? Like the first time we see the story of Broken Sword and Flying Snow, it's in red, and you know, it's this retelling of the story by Nameless, and he's kind of telling the story of these two lovers who kind of fell apart, and Sky, one of the other assassins, kind of came into their love triangle and became a love triangle, and you know, Flying Snow and Sky became a thing, and then because of that, there's like jealousy, and then they started, you know, they killed each other, betrayed one another, and
like, I exploited
the love,
their romance,
their romance and stuff. And like and they you know, portraying that through color, you know. First time it's in red, and then next time when the king tells it, right, he's like, no, I remember
you lie.
I remember, like, you know, Broken Sword and Sky being these honorable, you know, whatever assassins when I first fought them. And when he starts talking about it, it turns to this blue. They're all wearing blue. It's very
cool.
Use of all the blue colors and kind of utilizing that. And then after that, another time when that story is kind of retold, but you know, the real truth, right, is in green, right? When
the flashback is in green.
See, when he's, you know, fighting, when Flying Snow and Broken Sword infiltrate the palace, it's all in green, right? And you know, the use of color like that to kind of push the narrative, I think, is really, really cool. And refreshing.
Really refreshing. Like really simple as well. Like, oh, like that was, it's just such a great use of just like knowing kind of, or like once you because once you don't really realize it until after the fact, but then once you kind of click, it's like, oh, it's kind of like sectioned off,
and then the real truth is all in white. Right?
Yeah, and yeah, great use of color. It's like, oh, the red was a lie. It's red bad.
I don't necessarily think it was like that kind of choice for using it.
Yeah, I don't think there was. I think I was like reading that. I don't think there was any sort of motif thematic choice for colors. It was just simply just a way to just to section off like perspectives, essentially. But I think it kind of worked. Like white is like very pure, right? You know, red is kind of like in that sense. So that was pretty.
Or cool. Like signifying like love and passion.
Right. Yeah. Again, it's a very like passion, very like a fear-driven kind of story. The blue, I don't know what that's about.
Blue, kind of like honor and like tranquility, peace.
I'll give you
maybe.
that.
I don't know, like
I'll give you that. Yeah.
Something like that.
Something like that.
Green.
Don't write this down.
Green is a little bit harder.
Green, yeah. For flashbacks, I don't know. Roots. I don't know. Yeah, I thought it was cool that the kings, like when he was telling it, and we go back into that, it's very like you said, you know, he's like, these were very like honorable assassins, like they were very honorable people, and they very much like trusted each other, and like that story of them, of like how it came to be, and that Nameless like asked them, basically like persuaded them to help, but ultimately they didn't betray each other, they just like fought for who was gonna die first kind of thing, right? That it was just funny to see that the way that he envisioned the plan working was like in such high regard for his enemies, you know, like they were so pure in that sense. But the truth was like not really. Yeah. For you have the villain who's like the tyrant or whatever, but he has like the most pure vision for the story. Yeah. So that was kind of. I
want this story to be good.
Yeah. I don't believe my enemies were bad guys per se. That's not my impression of them. So I thought that was pretty cool. And that like Nameless's lie was that that they just like he exploited them and that they hated each other. Yeah. Whatever. And they like literally backstabbed each other. I was surprised on that scene when he like tried to rip them apart, and then Flying Snow backstabs him like quite literally through the door. I was like, oh shit. Yeah, I didn't expect it.
Straight up.
Yeah. I was like, whoa, that's ruthless. Just gonna go down like this. I thought we were gonna get into like lovers quarrel. I didn't think that we were drawing swords. So that kind of caught me off guard. But I mean, from that point on, I was like really invested. And then you know, I was there for the roller coaster ride when it was like, oh, so there's a more than meets the eye as the story goes on. Yeah. So I really, really enjoyed it. I think, and as far as Jet Li goes, I mean, this movie is definitely not showcasing a lot of him compared to the other ones, but I do think it's the best movie that he's in that we've seen
really?
So far. Yeah. What do you think?
It's good. I mean, it's a good movie. I wouldn't say it's his best, but definitely, I think since it's the biggest budget movie, there's a lot of like a scale difference between his other movies as well.
It's unfair to compare.
Yeah, that might be a little, but
yeah.
I do have a soft spot for Fist of Legends. So
Fist of Legends is really good. Like it has the like the commentary element of it, right? That it's really talking about something. But like you said, like the scale of it, I think that's the part that I wanted more was I don't know, something a little more epic or something that was a little more modern or just executed a little better. And I think Hero kind of does that for me. Yeah. In that sense. So, but yeah. I mean, really beautiful movie, though. We could talk about that. But what's your favorite part? What's the best thing to look at?
There's so many, in this movie. Like, there's so many different parts. I do really like the infiltration when, the green moment the green, everything when it's green, when
with the drapery.
the drapery, and when the king and Broken Sword start fighting in the palace, and all of that happening, and like they're just trying to find each other in this maze of green.
Yeah.
And then like at the end when the drapes fall, and then Broken Sword could have killed the king, but he basically spares his life, and just all of that, like, and even just like them fighting through the mass army that's like guarding the front of the palace,
just blowing their way through.
Yeah, it's just so funny how like as they're like fighting, just like shields and spears just like are thrown in the sky.
People are literally just like,
yeah, exactly. Which is funny, but I think it's very artistically like very pleasing, like stylistically. It's just like a great scene, I think, for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just. It's scale. Yeah. It's just kind of
I mean, there's so many I can talk about. Like I like the fight scene with Sky and Nameless in the beginning when they kind of have that like mind battle,
Yeah, I really like that.
And then the rain, like you see all the rain, and then the guy who's playing the instrument in the back.
They just like, he plays and then he's done. And then he's like, I'm out of here. And then he's like, wait.
I'll pay you.
And then gives him a butt ton of cash.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'll do whatever you want, dude.
Yeah.
And then he goes on to play. And then they don't fight for the entire period. They're just like having Jedi mind tricks with one another.
Yeah. It's just a very, cool take on like fighting, right? It's like, hey, instead of us like actually fighting, let's fight and see how far we'll get.
Who's going to do what first?
It's kind of that anime thing where they like,
100%.
Oh, yeah. He like knows like my every move, and I have to figure out which move I'll have to do, and then they're like
sweat coming down.
Like go like 50 different steps later, and then they're trying to figure out like how to beat each other,
Yeah. Who's gonna best who? And you're just like,
oh no,
get the same.
I don't have the skills to beat this guy.
It's gonna last like 10 episodes between fighting him. My final form. Yeah, and then he takes out like the protective thing for his spear.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, "Oh, you are worthy."
Yeah. He didn't fight anyone else with that.
What caught me really surprised was like, because that's like the first fight scene, right? And before that, he's fighting the like the elite guards from King's army, and like that's all really like that whole fight sequence with the 6 guys. It's really grounded. Like he doesn't take the thing out. But none of them are really doing wire work, anything. They're just like, fighting on the ground. And he swiftly beats everybody. And then out of nowhere, Nameless comes in. And then immediately it's like, fly. And it's like, flow.
Yeah.
And it's like a whole other realm of martial art. Like it's a whole other take on fighting from what I just saw 5 seconds ago.
It's because they're on another level.
Exactly, yeah. He's like, well, I got to pull out the feather foot.
The big guns.
So it really like kind of threw me for a loop for a second because I was like, oh, this is cool. Like this is, it's very pretty. Like this is well done. And all of a sudden it's like Zack Snyder's slow motion, like floating wire work. Like, oh, this is the skill that we're in now, So that like whole thing was kind of neat. But yeah, I really liked that. That was well done. Like it was in black and white, kind of like just the use of colors and changing things. And shout outs to Donnie Yen. Obviously, he's pretty cool. I think Jet Li was the reason why he was in this movie. He like endorsed Donnie Yen to play that role because somebody else was supposed to play it and then they dropped out. And Jet Li was like, "Hey, I know some guy.
I know a guy named Iman.
I can
play the role.
He's good enough. He's good enough, yeah, that one was really cool. I don't know. I honestly don't know what my favorite would be. Maybe that one. I don't know. I just felt like maybe I saw like, because all the other fight scenes happened like 3 times in a row, right?
Yeah, like the fighting at the camp.
Yeah,
kind of happens like 3 times.
But they're all like condensed. Like they're not really
right
entire sequences, right?
And then the fighting at the lake or whatever.
That's the other one. That's the other really big one. That one's cool. But even that's not really fighting. It was more of just like performance art. Like they're just hopping and skipping.
A lot of it's kind of like that though here in this movie. Like, when Moon and Flying Snow fight.
That was the other one. I actually didn't really like. I think that's my least favorite.
Where it's like all yellow, right?
And
they're
leaves.
fighting in the leaves.
Yeah.
And then just like these leaves start attacking her.
Yeah.
Every time she does hurricane.
She's an airbender.
Yeah.
You're no match for my power,
Mm-hmm.
Moon. Get out of here, Moon. The mistress. Yeah. Yeah, I guess the first fight scene is probably my favorite because the only other way I can think of is like when we get to that what really happened when Nameless proposes the plan to them, and what is it? Flying Snow gets on his side and says that she'll cooperate, but Broken Sword refuses to kill the king, and he's like, "I'm gonna stop you from doing it." And all of a sudden, she's like, "Well, we gotta kill him now because he's not he's not part of the team." And so that whole bit happens. That one is pretty cool though. The whole sequence is fine.
Yeah.
He's got the wobbly sword. Just starts smacking. Wobble wobble swing. Yeah. But I think it really works. I really liked just how everything kind of unfolded and like just between like the deception and how like everything was kind of neat. Like I totally would have believed his lie, which I did. And then the king's perspective was like, well, actually, you're definitely lying. And I believe this is what happened. And that felt definitely more fantasy-like, though. But just because also it was also like, I would never betray you. Like, it was very much like that,
Yeah.
And then when Nameless, once he's like figured out for the most part, and he's like, well, actually, you forgot about this part, which is Broken Sword and sort of like his true motive. Then it felt like really grounded. Like this was like, okay, kind of something that maybe his character would really do.
Yeah. And then like that Romeo and Juliet ending.
Oh my God, bro.
Broken Sword and Flying Snow.
I'm not going to defend myself. I mean, no matter what happened, they all died. They both died at the end.
Yeah.
Like in every iteration, they didn't make it.
Deads.
They deads. And Moon is just like,
no. Every single time she's like, no.
At least she died in the first one. Like at least she had some kind of conclusion.
Oh wait, did she die in the first one?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
She got stabbed. But no, she's just gonna left to suffer.
She's just chilling.
Bam, bam, bam. Yeah.
There's a lot to, I think, digest in this movie.
Yeah. From an academic perspective, you could do a lot, I think, as well.
What do you mean?
I mean, specifically cinematography-wise, there's a lot to look at and to dig into. And just to, just informative-wise and, like, how to craft a scene, obviously use of color.
Yeah.
Just, like, where to place the camera. I think we're going to talk about issues. My biggest issue was like editing maybe, or like the way that the movie was cut. And a lot of times there's action. I think it's just like coming off of Fist of a Legend, where it's very, like we said, kind of grassroots, like very like you see the action in a wide, like everything feels like it's in a master shot. Like we can kind of really appreciate Jet Li's abilities.
Yeah.
Here it's like it's more of like we said, it's very kind of like an opera. It's very like fantastical, and then it's not really playing for that. And so what I'm seeing is like a lot of like shot for shot, and it was a specific action. Like, oh, he does this cool floating kick, and it's just like a shot of just that, and then like cut to something else. Like it's all works for like bringing out the wire work or bringing out that fantasy level of it. But what I kind of get lost was like blocking of the characters,
right,
or just like sometimes maybe the flow of the scene a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's most prevalent. I think in the fight with Flying Snow and Moon, that you kind of lose that, right? Like the sense of like, okay, what's happening? Because every time it's just like a close up shot of her like swiping her sword, and then this tornado basically, right?
And then they're in the air
like 4 times, and then in the air, and then all of that stuff. Like I said, like there's a lot to digest in this movie, but I think that like you said, for me, I didn't really like approach it as an action movie. I think, because we watch so many of Jelly's films now that it's very focused on action, right?
Yeah.
Where there's not a lot of the kind of wire work, or it's very focused on like you said, the master and seeing everything.
Yeah.
And that kind of editing. I think in this movie it's more like the way that they shot it. Also, the story itself is kind of more it's more focused on making it look good, right? Showing a beautiful overall scene,
right,
rather than just making the action look good.
Yeah.
And so I think that kind of is the difference between
yeah,
let's say, for example, Fist of Legend and Hero.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it like I said, it's less towards the action or physical parts, and it's definitely shot more to support kind of the story,
and
sort of kind of keep things moving, or really just reflecting the tone or what's happening in the scene. I'm thinking of the lake scene specifically, right? When he's like, oh, I assume that you and Broken Sword fought as well, just for honor's sake,
right,
essentially, because you killed his wife.
Yeah. So for Fist of Legend, the action, they tell the story through the action.
Yeah.
And it's very much what's happening in the moment kind of thing. Whereas in Hero, the action and the things that are happening is a reflection of the overarching emotion or the theme that's happening in that moment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you said, during that lake scene, the action is there and it's happening, but it's more about that defending my honor, my honor, my wife, because she died or whatever, or
and he says it clearly, it's you're fighting, but your hearts weren't in it, so it feels very
it's about
loose.
the heart, right? It's about the heart of the scene, rather than just this cool action that I have to show, right? Same thing for for the green scenes, right? When they're fighting, the king and Broken Sword's fighting. It's the action is there, but you really, honestly, it's very choppy if you think about it.
Exactly,
the way that they shoot it, or the way that the action happens, right? There's not a lot of just two people fighting, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of these close up shots of the sword, or the drapes, and then he's a close up shot of the king, and then the guys in the back, and all these different things. So it's more about the overarching emotional impact of the action, rather than the action itself. I don't know if that's if I'm describing it
I get exactly what you mean. Like you said, it's not showing you, like you said, kind of in Fist of Legend, which is you're shooting for action. We're not watching it as it's playing out in the moment. We're not, like you said, they're kind of telling action through story. If he's going out and he's seeking revenge for his master and he's fighting him, we're watching the fight sequence as a story in itself, and we're there in the moment. Here it's not like that. Like I said, it's very choppy, and that's where my initial comment, where it's you kind of get lost in the blocking and things don't make sense, but because it's not really a focus.
Yeah, it's more of a meta thing, right?
Yeah,
the action is more of a meta thing. For example, when Moon and Flying Snow are fighting, and all that, the wind is happening and all the leaves are going crazy. It's kind of the internal state of the two characters and the kind of turmoil that they have as well, right? It's not just the action itself, right? But it's also trying to express that emotional thing. And when the leaves turn red, it's kind of showing that it's fallen, it's fall now. It's red and kind of bloody, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of emotional aspect to the action that it's trying to portray, right?
Yeah, like I said, in the flashback when he's set when he's like about to assassinate the king, right? And it's like they're in the green drapery, and he like Broken Sword gets lost in the shadows, right? And the king is like lost, and it's like what it's showing is like the king is being bested in this moment, right? And he's like he can't find them. He's like lost in the shadows, and he's like he sees him and he tries to get him, and it's like cutting down all the drapes, but he's like keeps missing. It's like what we're watching is like this frantic state of mind that he's in, that he's clearly, losing, whereas Broken Sword is, obviously being superior in this moment. But like, if you're looking at it from like an action perspective or like shot for shot, it's just like very cutty. It's very like he's here, but it's like it's a repeat shot, or like I've seen that drape cut like 6 times, or like but it's
and by the end of that shot, all the drapes fall down, it's kind of like a sense of clarity, right? Like there's no more like hiddenness. There's no more like it's not no more a maze, right? It's all the green fell, and it's just a king left alone in that palace, and it's kind of that realization or like final clarity in that moment, and it's beautifully done, right? It's such a it's almost symbolic of that, and it's not necessarily like a direct like this is the action thing.
Right. Yeah, and I mean overall like. Just us talking about it does a really good job of the movie doing that in general, of just getting sort of feelings across and getting just, what is on your mind, or like what is sort of the theme of in the scene going on without explicitly saying it at all. And this movie is like virtually dialogueless as well. Like it's very
sparse.
Very sparse. And when they do talk, it's very straight to the point. Like just the whole scenes between Nameless and the king is very like yes, no, of course, who, it's very very monotone in that sense. But I thought it was great. I think that's one of my favorite parts of the movie too, is kind of how straightforward it is, and just like there's a little of like dichotomy between Nameless and the king. The king's very like insightful, like he's very kind of open, and he's like, how did you do this? And he's like, I heard you do this. He's kind of like the one asking the questions, and Nameless is very much like just kind of answering it and going through it, But then there's also like a sense of shock as well when he gets figured out. He's like, well, you're very insightful, king, in that sense.
Yeah, I am here to kill you.
Why else would I be here? What are you talking about? Why'd you let me in? So yeah, there was all that. It's I really liked, on that note, like I think that the language of the movie is in Mandarin, but like the way that they speak Mandarin is different. Like it's very, like I said, it's kind of monotone, very straightforward, but it's very dramatized. Like it kind of adds to the opera kind of tone of it, but it's very like oh how, you know what I mean? But that just kind of like really adds to the dramaticness of the movie. It really sets the tone of it, you know what I mean? But everything works in like unison. I think it's just my final point. Everything really kind of synchronizes together and gets across. Favorite character? Least favorite character?
Lee.
Moon. Who? You don't like Jet Li's character?
That is my favorite character. Is that?
Oh.
Nah, I'm kidding. I actually like Sky. He's the least. He comes out the least. But for the little bit he comes out, I think he's a pretty cool dude.
He's like, yeah. It's funny that he's there. He's like he's kind of vital to the story. He's like, one of the main assassins, but he was never like in the assassination attempt scene. Nah. So like, was he ever a threat? But then they pitch him as like they all kind of work together with Broken Sky, or like he was pinnacle in like breaking up that relationship. But then like that didn't turn out to be true. Yeah. So then you're like,
he's like why? Nothing, dude.
Yeah. You're like, why was that guy even?
He was useless. He was
yeah. By the end of it, it was like, what?
It was just a threat.
He was just a threat. But I think like he needed to best him to like convince Broken Sky and Flying Snow, or Broken Sword and Flying Snow, that he's like legit. But he did a demonstration in front of them.
He's like, oh yeah, your sword's fast.
So was it really a need to murder somebody?
Yeah.
We don't question these things. Nah. It is what it is. But yeah.
I mean, if you're trying to find sense in these movies, you're gonna find very little of it. So
it's all about aesthetics. It's just aesthetics. Yeah, like when so what is it, like the army comes in, right? And it was like an assassination attempt on the Quinn's army when they shoot all the arrows towards the calligraphy school.
Yeah.
And all the students just go back to painting. Like, he's like, no, like all we have left is writing. So write till you die. And they're like, all right. And there's like a couple of students that like just drop while writing. Like, nah. No way.
Yeah, like the blocking the arrows scene. Wow. Let me block arrows. Let's go.
Let's go.
Oh, you're pretty good.
Yeah, I know. They come out. He's like watching Broken Sword like do his thing, and he's like, I'm gonna go help. And Broken Sword's like, what are you up to? And then the mistress comes out, Flying Snow, and he's like, you must be Flying Snow. And she's like, I don't need your help. And he's like, I'm gonna help anyway. And she's like, you know what? You're actually not that bad. You're pretty cool.
It's funny.
I did like the little note, or just the little scene where he's like writing, and then the arrow comes in and breaks his stick.
He just catches
and he grabs another one and goes back.
Goes back to it.
I'm the badass. But yeah, lucky old man. That guy, all the arrows missed him while he was writing.
I'm sure it hit him by the end of it.
Huh?
I'm sure it hit him by the end of it.
Why can't Nameless have that skill? He could have defended all those arrows at the end.
At the end, he probably did have it. He just chose not to.
That man's a G. Come on. All for my country. Yeah. Overall, that movie is definitely special for sure. You know, it took me 2 years old to find out, but
20 years. 20 years later.
23. I mean, like most of Jelly's movies, I remember seeing this movie around. I just never watched it. You know?
I'm sure.
That I seen it?
No, I'm sure you've heard of it.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I think actually I mixed this movie up with Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon a lot. That they just kind of feel the same in my mind. Even though I haven't seen Crouching Tiger either.
I see.
We'll get there.
I don't think I'll be honest. I didn't really like it too much. Yeah.
Ang Lee's like hit or miss. I don't know.
It's whatever.
He's whatever. Maybe we'll do a Wirework series.
Wirework. And find the craziest ones possible.
floating man series.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one's a good one. I don't know. For like a Jet Li series, this one, it feels a little out of place just because he's not very...
What do you mean? He's the main character.
Is he?
Yeah.
Is he though?
Yes, he is.
Are you sure?
He's 100%.
Are you... Are you sure?
Yeah, his name's first.
By technicality. Yes. With like 6 lines in the whole movie.
Well, I don't think you have to be the central. Yeah, I don't think you have to come out the most to be the main character.
I'm like all 3 movies though. I mean,
I'm sure you had the most screen time though. Actually, if you probably count the minutes.
Yeah.
It just kind of feels like it's divided very, because I think it's the colors. The colors make you feel like there's a lot more of that in there.
Of like other things? Yeah.
You know
well, I mean? For me, it's just like the focus of the story though. Like, you know, like he's there obviously in the beginning.
He's in all of the stories though.
I mean, he's in all the stories, but he's not the forefront of all of the stories. Like,
he's the one orchestrating all of it though.
Yes, but it's like, what actually like, who's like drawing in more is Tony Leung and Maggie Cheung. Like they're like, okay, they're like, they have more of an impact on the story than this guy who's like, I'm gonna
it's because
kill one of you.
He's basically the one devising the plans to make them do stuff.
I guess, yeah.
And then they're trying to figure out their own issues.
and then he like, but he doesn't even know what he wants to do till like the very end. He's like, I'm gonna seek revenge, and then by the end he's like, actually, I think that broken sword guy was right.
Well, that's because the story, they're repeating the same story in different ways 3
Right,
times.
yeah.
That's why.
Yeah.
Which is probably why it feels like that.
I mean, I'm just
I know.
talking stuff. Yeah. That's not how I actually feel.
I know.
I'm playing devil's advocate right now. That's all. Yeah. But what I was saying is, like, in the last two movies, Jet Li's been like this deadpan character. Like, there's no life in this guy.
No, but this one especially.
But this one up for sure. For sure. Fearless has been the most, but even he has gone. He went down there,
Yeah.
And then he worked his way back up. But is it the same for the next one?
Actually, it's been a long time since I've watched it. But I think I think it's definitely not even nowhere near close to this one.
Okay.
In terms of like how straight he
Yes.
plays it.
He's like, who are you talking about?
So the next one we're gonna watch is about like Jet Li plays a monk who it's like I don't know if it's a folklore or like a myth, but it's like about this monk who's kind of in that like folklore or whatever. Like it's kind of this like a
Buddhist tale,
kind of like the superhero of way back when kind of
okay,
thing.
yeah,
like this kind of like monk who like fought for
who could do a kamehameha,
yeah.
chi ball,
Yeah,
okay. I mean,
kind of like that. Yeah.
Monks are deadpan.
No, not all monks. Shaolin soccer. Definitely not deadpan.
They were monks. They were Shaolin martial artists.
Shaolin monks.
But they were like...
The dude was a monk. He came down to preach his Shaolin, Shaolinness.
He was modernized. He was a modernized guy.
Mm-hmm.
No. We'll see. I'll be the judge of that. I hopefully get to wrap it up for the series though. Should be cool.
Yeah.
He's nimble again. This is
I think this is probably when he's youngest from all of our
1992.
Yeah.
We are talking about Once Upon a Time in China.
Yes.
Yeah. From 1992. So this would be his earliest in the series anyway.
Yeah.
So he'll be even more nimble than the upside down kick he did last movie.
Yes.
That one was by... Next week is by Tsui Hark, is the director of the movie. I have no idea. I have no idea where to find this one. Where did you watch this movie, by the way? On Pluto?
Like a long time ago?
Or this time around? Or did you own this movie on DVD?
I haven't watched this yet.
No,
you mean Hero?
Hero.
Oh, I watched it Amazon.
Oh, Amazon? Oh, yeah. YouTube had a pretty good...
YouTube had it?
Yeah.
No, I didn't know.
I rented it.
Oh, you rented it on YouTube?
Yeah, I did.
On Amazon.
Yeah, on Amazon. Did you rent it from Amazon? Or was okay?
It's not on.
I was about to say, like, wait a minute. Did I just spend $4 for no reason?
Nah.
Are you telling me? Actually, all these movies have been they're not really streamable available, which is kind of weird. I don't know. I feel like they should. Hero feels like enough of a hit to be
Who knows?
to be streamed. Maybe it was Once Upon a Time. But yeah, I think that'll do it for this episode. Next week it'll be about Monkman. I mean, Once Upon a Time in China. It'll be about Krillin. You know what Krillin?
Yeah, he's not bald though. He has that like long ponytail, but like it's like half.
Oh yeah, bye. I'm thinking Japanese monk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking Shaolin monk too. Yeah. All right, that's fair. With the dots on his head? No.
He doesn't have dots. No. At least I don't think he does. I don't, it's been a while. It's been a long time.
We will find out if he has dots on his head next week. So next week, Once Upon a Time in China. We'll see you then. Quick shout out, Patreon page. Come and check us out for some cool stuff. We'll be releasing, if you want the episodes early, the plan is Mondays, and everybody else will get it by the end of the week. So we'll see you then to wrap it up. Peace.
Bye.